Now on Money Talk 1010 AM, it's the Morgan Streetman Show. Morgan and Roxanne Wilder are discussing everything from world, national, and local issues to information from the unknown. And since Morgan's an attorney, there'll probably be a little something from the law. Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Hello, Morgan. I'll give you a little break from talking. Okay. Good morning, Morgan, or good lunchtime, Pat George. What's going on? How are you gentlemen doing? Holding down the fort.
I just learned a lot in the last hour, so I'm ready to go, too. And I know Morgan's got a whole nother pile of paperwork over there, but it was a great show the last hour, Morgan.
Yeah, pretty punchy, huh?
Just kind of smooth right in here.
Well, I got my toes warmed up this morning. No frostbite. It was amazing. Even though it's been freezing, and I understand it's going to be freezing again tonight.
See, I come into work about 5 o'clock in the morning, and so when I drove in this morning, it felt so good because I finally figured out how to use the heat seater in my car. It felt so good. I didn't want to get out of the car. I'm like, would Mason mind if I just called in and did my report from the vehicle? Because my back was feeling
she's
great.
got one of those new cars. You know, I come in and I wrap myself in a moving blanket in my truck.
Or maybe rather, you wake up in the truck, right? And then,
I haven't done that. I just wrap myself with a moving blanket. You know, it was minus 74 in someplace in Alaska.
Oh, my goodness.
Minus 74. It was said that on the thermometer outside the grocery store.
Yeah, that takes me back to when my dad lived up in Minnesota for a while. And, I mean, the temperatures that they would get there would be like minus 50 sometimes. How can you live like that?
I was watching some lottery show where this person won $1 million and they're trying to buy a house in Minnesota. And I said the first thing I do, I'd be moving out of Minnesota.
Move to Florida.
Right. What does that mean? I mean, minus 20. What does that even feel like? I have no comparison.
Well, my friend in Chicago told me it was minus 4, and he said it was like little needles, little needles on your fingers, and it felt like somebody was just hitting you with BBs or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, when it gets into the 40s around here, I'm shivering so much I can't do anything, outside. I can't, I lose my fine motor control. Well, speaking of motor control, if you want to motor on over to Morgan Street Media sometime, you can see a lot of our past shows there, and we've got them up on YouTube. And we appreciate all the support from folks. So go out there and check out some of our past stuff that we've done before, morganstreetmedia.com. And, it's interesting because we were talking last week about Democratic presidential candidates and others. And in the intervening week, we've seen a couple of folks whose names we mentioned. One in particular is California Senator Kamala Harris. She's announced that she's running for the Democratic nomination and apparently drew a pretty sizable crowd in Oakland, California. Yeah, I know, Pat, surprises me too, frankly. Because she really hasn't done anything that's worthy of, we should make this person president. But nevertheless, she apparently is drawing some of that social justice warrior type crowd, and that's who she's playing to with the Medicare for All and everything else. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is, and I'm sure they're getting ahead of this is what they're doing, because now that she's announced, they're going to go ahead and get any negative things out there so that the people will already mentally deal with them. And by the time somebody tries to make an issue of it, they'll say, "Oh no, that's old
We've
news.
Forgiven her." Yes,
we've known about that. Look at you. You're being we can imagine what they'll call people who would oppose her. But one of the things that's come out is she actually had a fairly successful, I suppose, extramarital affair with a gentleman. Well, should we call him a gentleman? But he was the mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. He was kind of a debonair fellow, always very well dressed. And apparently was fairly open about his extramarital affairs.
He said, "So what if I dated Kamala Harris?"
Yeah, so what? Hey, everybody's doing it. I was reading in the paper he used to show up at parties with his wife on one arm and his girlfriend on the other arm. Okay, so I mean that's the level that he was operating at. Brazen. That's almost like Bill Cosby level brazenness. I mean. Yeah, anyway.
That's a whole nother level.
Yeah, that is a whole nother level.
Maybe he's a Mormon. Huh? Maybe he's a Mormon.
Maybe he is a Mormon. That's
that
right.
Would explain it.
I'm being a religiousist. What is it when you're like a racist about religions? What do we call that? Is there a word for that?
There will be soon.
Okay. We got to have more isms and things. I'm sure I'm guilty of them. I don't know, but anything you think you're guilty of a negative thing. Another person who I don't know that he
I want to go back to Senator Harris.
Yeah.
And just want to say, what her big statement is right now is America deserves better than this. Mm-hmm. And it reminds you that as a senator, her goal really is to not have the country in a good place right now, because that would hurt her campaign. The worse off the country, or the worse off it seems to be, the better her campaign. And that's sad. Yeah. It's always been that way, but it seems heightened.
And since Donald Trump came into office, it seems like a lot of people have taken that position. Mm-hmm. I mean, I happen to remember that there were a lot of people that were pretty upset that President Obama was elected president. There were a lot of people that weren't happy about that, but I don't remember the desire of, well, you know what? I hope that the country goes down the tubes so that we can get rid of President Obama. I don't remember anybody saying that or hoping for that. But, I mean, there's been a whole rash of people. Mm-hmm. I mean, from Bill Maher to, just all kinds of people have essentially said, look, the only way we're going to take President Trump out is if the economy crashes. So I hope the economy crashes because we got to get rid of President Trump. And that's what they've said. And, to your point, what a shame. Mm-hmm. What a shame that you're a United States senator and that's as far as you can see. You can't even see beyond your own self-interest that you want to be president. You want to run against Donald Trump and you hate Donald Trump. And you can't see beyond that. You can't see the greater good of, okay, well, maybe I don't agree with him, but let me find points of common ground and let me try to work with him and let me not obstruct his administration. It doesn't mean I have to participate in everything that they want to do, and I don't have to become a supporter, but I'm not going to be active resistance. And I don't understand why that's such a hard concept for people to accept, that, you need to just accept that the other party won and you're just going to have to put up with it for 4 years and you get your chance again in 4 more years. And that's the way our country works. And you don't become a little communist resistor like everybody has become. We have to resist. Well, if you don't stand up to it, you're enabling it. You're part of it. No, you're not. You're just not actively being a person who's undermining the entire country. And that's what people like Senator Kamala Harris and others are doing, both with their words, in other words, what they're pushing out into the media, the things that they're saying, but also with what they're doing. They're undermining him. So, and I'm looking, Pat's pulling up all of the folks. And, of course, there's a lot of folks that we've mentioned, Kristen Gillibrand, Tulsi Gabbard we talked about, Julian Castro, we talked about him. We didn't even get through all the stuff with his mom and La Raza, which is the race. La Raza is a group of very radical Mexican Americans. They call themselves Chicanos in the 70s and 80s who wanted to actually create a country that seceded from the United States down in what they call the stolen land, the land that the United States stole from Mexico. And I suppose that if you want to view it that way, you can view it in that way. They're not completely – and we did take the land, but, then again, we were at war, and that's what happens at wars. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of other issues there. It isn't as simple as saying America was the bad guys. They took Mexico's land. No, it's a lot more complicated than that. And there's a whole lot of issues there that, unfortunately, people nowadays aren't dedicating the time, and they don't have the easy resources to get good information that's not propaganda, to actually go back and look into some of this historical stuff so that they can get the context, so that they're not being fooled and lied to by people that are not giving them the proper context to look at these things. So another person who's announced it, we didn't even mention this person. I started to, but you remember, Pat, I had a list of like 15 people to run through. Yeah. I had to make some cuts somewhere, and one of the cuts I decided to make was Howard Schultz. And we didn't mention Howard Schultz, but he goes on
as an independent.
Yeah, that's what he says. Plan? And, he's a very smart guy. There's no question about it. He was an excellent leader for his company. They did very well under his leadership. So I think we have to give him that much. We have to say that he's a good businessman.
He's still a big part. He believes in that world order, though.
Oh, of course.
That's the part that I went, okay.
Yeah, he's a dyed-in-the-wool globalist. He's going to be right down the line on all that. I'm not going to be supporting him. He's got too many policies that I don't agree with. I wouldn't be supporting him. But he is saying, hey, Democrats, you guys are getting too far left. You're essentially getting too far into crazy land, and it's not going to work with people. One, because those solutions just don't work. When you completely divorce yourself from reality, you can't come up with solutions that realistically work for people because you don't live in reality. This is the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or is she going by AOC now? Whatever. Sandy from was it Westchester, or whatever it was. When you get to that level, you can no longer reason through and create useful solutions for people. So, Howard Schultz is the antidote to all of that Democrat craziness. But nevertheless, I don't think he's going to make it. My only hope is that he serves as a useful Ross Perot. He's just like Ross Perot. Take away enough votes so that President Trump wins a second term, baby. And we'll just keep this party going, right? Well, I'm kidding a little bit. But we do want to get into some interesting stuff that happened with Roger Stone last week. We'll tell you all about that when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show, and a lot of interesting developments last week when it comes to Roger Stone.
Yeah, I tell you, the Republican dirty trickster, Roger Stone, he goes back to the Nixon days. Roger Stone does, and we've had some of his proteges on. Remember, we had Jonathan Lockwood on the show one time, interviewed him with Stop the Steal, and he's a protege of Roger Stone. And apparently Roger, and this is why we've put this in our local interest segment, he maintains a house here in Florida, as well as he's got a home up in New York City as well. And so his house is down in Fort Lauderdale, but I guess, was it Thursday or Friday morning? I think it was
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, yeah, that's what I was thinking. The FBI showed up at his house for a pre-dawn raid. Now, for all of our benefit, this was captured on camera by CNN, but that creates its own set of problems, which is, how did CNN know to be there? That's a pretty big deal.
And Fox News didn't know about it.
Yeah, nobody else knew about it, just CNN. They literally are favoring the news outlets that are going to give them the best coverage, the kind of coverage that they want. And that's who they're tipping off. It'd be illegal to leak the information that he was going to be arrested. They claim one of the reasons they may have done it was they were afraid to give him any heads up. Well, are you telling me that reporter couldn't have called with a heads up? Obviously the reporter's on their side, special counsel's side. But the point is, the reason that you didn't let Roger Stone or his attorneys know in advance is because you were worried about tipping them off, then from an information security perspective, you can't tip off your buddy who's a reporter. You can't do it because you don't know who that person might tell. He might tell one of his buddies who he doesn't know is secretly buddies with Roger Stone or something. And by the way, Roger Stone's really in touch with a lot of media people. I was watching him do an interview on Tucker Carlson, and Tucker was saying that he and Roger text back and forth all the time. So he's in touch with a lot of different people. So you wouldn't tip off CNN. Right? If it was truly an information security thing. No, this was a spectacle being made of a man who's about 66 years old, who's not a threat to anybody. Now, he is a political dirty trickster, there's no doubt.
Well, what did the dirty tricks, what did he pull? What did he do?
Well, just, he's been around for a long time, Pat. He knows how to create the same kinds of crowd angst and buzz that the Democrats seem to be really good at. So that's kind of what Jonathan Lockwood was kind of telling us. It was almost turnabout down there with the Stop the Steal folks, and how they were just organizing people. You got to have signs. The signs have to be readable. We need to write the signs in a certain way, teaching people how to write signs for messaging. To me, I'll be honest with you, Pat, a lot of this stuff seems like common sense. So maybe I could be a political organizer, because it's really not rocket science. It's not hard to figure out what to do. But I guess if you just get a group of regular people together who aren't conniving and who aren't clever and who aren't used to scheming, the answers that they generate in their group just out of their own heads tend to be wrong. They put too much words on the sign. They put the wrong words on the sign. I don't know. There's all kinds of things they do wrong. But if they could just do the right stuff, they can be more effective. And the right stuff is the same kind of stuff you see the Democrats doing with all their marches and getting together and showing up at people's houses and stuff like that. I'm not suggesting that we should be doing that, or that that's okay, the showing up at people's houses, because I do think that's wrong. But it's this kind of, community organizing effort that can take a small group of unhappy people and make it seem like, using the media, that you've got a big group of unhappy people who feel this way. Mm-hmm. And that's been done everywhere. And we're going to get into a story about that, like the Venezuela story. And that is, foment a little bit of problems. I'll be honest with you, it's kind of like what the U.S. did in Iran back during the days when we brought the Shah back to Iran. We sent a guy over there. His name's Kermit Roosevelt. He was the nephew of Teddy Roosevelt. And he went over there with a bunch of cash, started paying people to. This is all documented. I mean, this is not stuff that's questionable.
Morgan, did you think about this before the show, or did Kermit Roosevelt just pop in your head?
No,
how do you know all these people?
This is just popping into my head. I don't know.
Amazing.
We're just following the rabbit
trail.
Everything. We're just following the rabbit trail that's in my own mind, wherever it leads, and I'm not sure.
So you did not know you were going to say Kermit Roosevelt?
No. But it is. It's a very useful analogy because it's what we've done a lot of other places, and what we did was we went over there and he paid people to go, basically groups like gangs, street gangs, to go and fight with other street gangs. He'd pay off both sides. He'd go to this place and meet your rival street gang and have a fight, and then he'd have the media show up there. And they'd film it, and they'd broadcast it all over the country. And people in Iran actually began to think that there was widespread unrest in their own country when really there wasn't. Mm-hmm. It was all made for TV. And so just a few clashes and demonstrations can be woven into a story that there is a widespread unrest. And these are the kinds of political dirty tricks that those of us who are normal folks, we don't think of these things.
Right.
Guys like Roger Stone, they've been around the block enough that they can think of these types of things. And again, I don't mean to suggest that Roger Stone is doing exactly what the Democrats and Antifa people are doing right now, because I think that he takes a slightly less violent tip. I think they've taken it a step beyond what he does, but he knows how to manipulate crowds and manipulate the media and things like that. So, in our parlance, we just call those political dirty tricks. Mm-hmm. But the point is that he was arrested like he was some kind of an armed criminal. I mean, they sent a couple dozen FBI agents to his house at 4-something in the morning, and you can watch the video, which, again, shouldn't even be video of this. That, to me, that's an embarrassment that there's video of this. That's wrong. There should not be this video. The man was made a spectacle of by the criminal justice system, and he's not been convicted of anything.
Chad Johnson, the wide receiver for the NFL, he's retired, but he tweeted, FBI, no, I have to read this tweet and censor myself. FBI arrested my neighbor Roger before my morning jog. I've only seen like this in the movies. Crazy to start my Friday.
Stuff like this,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, because it was crazy. I mean, you literally saw the guys running up to the door with their AR-15s out in their hands, like Roger Stone, who's a public figure, who's a 66-year-old man. What's he going to do? Do they think he's sitting in there with a 50 cal waiting for him? Absolutely not. He doesn't even have a firearm in his possession at his house, he says. And he doesn't have a gun permit. So, this was strictly to make a spectacle of this guy and to create a chilling effect. Because Roger Stone's been out in public a lot lately, being very critical of the special counsel's office. And he's been in the media a lot. And he's known he was going to be indicted. So this is a statement to folks like, not really like me and you, but like anybody in our position who might want to speak out against the special counsel's office. Just remember, we could look at you too. The great eye of Sauron could focus on you too. And if we focus on you, we will find something to do to you. Mm-hmm. We will come after you and ruin your life financially, personally, everything. We will destroy you. So you decide how much you want to stand up for the truth, for justice, for honesty, because it may be at a very high personal cost. And I think that's a darn shame. That chilling effect is a darn shame in our country. I think when you look at what they say Roger Stone did, the evidence just doesn't support it. This has been a witch hunt. He, again, is being hit with a bunch of process crimes, a bunch of lying to the FBI, a bunch of obstruction of justice, witness tampering, which I don't think anything that he did rises to that level. He had discussions with people, and, that in and of itself is not witness tampering. It's just not. When you're telling somebody that they have to change their story for one reason or another, and they actually do, that's witness tampering, right? But he was saying, Credico, tell the truth, and he was basically cussing out his old friend because I guess the old friend either remembers things different or is testifying to things different for his own purposes. And so, I don't view that. I mean, that's just a statement. It didn't even work. The guy didn't change. Witness tampering, to me, it ought to actually work. You can't just go on TV and say they ought to tell the truth, and this is what the truth is. I mean, does that become witness tampering? No, you're just stating your opinion and what you would testify to as to what you think the truth is. But they've gotten him again for these process crimes of lying to the, House Investigative Committee or whatever on something that he claims he forgot about. And as somebody who's interviewed witnesses and dealt with fact issues and dealt with people's memories throughout my entire career, you learn that it isn't as rock solid as, folks make it out to be. Well, you should remember that. Well, sometimes people misremember stuff, and it's not intentional. And when you do this job like I do enough with enough facts and details, you often sometimes find yourself misremembering stuff. And then it clicks with you and you're like, oh, I see how that can happen to somebody who's not being dishonest, not meaning to be dishonest. They just got a little confused because there's so much detail and so much facts in our hugely interconnected and very communicative lives that we live now. It's too much to keep in your own brain. Wow. We're not moving very fast, y'all. We're just getting to the end of the second segment, and we're finishing out our first segment's story. So we're going to have to pick it up in the third segment because we do want to talk some about the Covington Catholic High School students, which I think, again, another media spectacle, probably made for everybody's consumption as well. We've got, of course, the shutdown has been stopped, and that's over with, but the State of the Union is not going forward tomorrow. And we do want to get in and talk a little bit about what's going on in Venezuela. So we've got all that to cover. And then when we go out there, boy, you're not going to believe the story we've got for you when we go out there. We've got all that and more when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Roxanne Wilder with you. If you want to be part of the conversation, give us a call, 888-404-1010. Pat George is here as always, and we're buzzing through lots of stories going on around our country. One that's taken so much of the focus of bad things going on with kids, and it's kind of been overstated. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and we were just talking about it in the pre-show, talking about this Covington Catholic thing, and you were saying, that you didn't actually know exactly what had happened there, and we're asking me to kind of run down through it for you. So let me just give folks a quick rundown of what actually happened. Now, this is all caught on video. Now, it may not be the video that you saw, because the video that you saw and that was publicized only cut to a certain point. And it made it look like the kids were doing something much more aggressive than they actually were. And if you watch the whole video, first of all, it's quite lengthy, but if you watch the whole thing, at the key parts, you see that there's 3 dozen high school students who are all standing there. They had just been to that Right to Life march. And yeah, a lot of them did have on MAGA hats, the Make America Great Again, those red hats that Trump likes to wear. But of course, there are vendors all over D.C. at the National Mall selling those hats. It's a popular tourist item that people want to buy when they come to D.C. So apparently they had actually just bought those hats from there. But because they were wearing those hats, allegedly, a group of people, then they call themselves Black Israelites, began accosting these children. Now, these were adult males. They were obviously males. Some of them had big beards, and they were definitely older than a bunch of young high school kids. And by the way, these were kids. You can see them. One of them takes his shirt off, when they're doing their school chants. These are kids. But the Black Israelites began to shout obscene things that can't be repeated here on the radio, actually, at these children. And really horrific things to say, and clearly antagonizing the children. Now, the children didn't engage. They didn't start hurling a bunch of racist epithets at these Black Israelites or anything like that. What they decided to do was decided to start singing school chants. And I mean, they've interviewed one of these children. His name's Nick Sandman. He's the one that actually gets confronted by the Native American, that part of the story we're coming to. But they've interviewed him, and these do not appear to be racist kids. They say racism is not tolerated at our school, and we're not racist. So they didn't respond in kind. Okay, the Black Israelites were being racist against the white school children, but the white school children didn't respond in kind, and they were not racist back to the blacks. What they did was they started chanting their school chants. Okay, now you may think that's juvenile or stupid or silly or whatever, but these are a bunch of kids. And I say that is a very acceptable response for a bunch of kids being accosted. Okay, we can imagine the whole number of different things they could have done, including responding in kind, which is usually what children do. But instead, they kind of tried to rise above, and they were trying to drown out all these negative epithets that were being said about them. Now, into this marches a Native American. They're calling him a tribal elder, but they obviously haven't checked into this guy's background at all. So whether or not he is actually some kind of a tribal elder, I believe, is up for debate. But they also, remember, called him a Vietnam vet, which he definitely wasn't a Vietnam vet, which I think is, it's just amazing to me that the news organizations just take people at face value. And when they're telling the kind of story that the news organization wants to run, they don't question them at all. They don't look into their background. They don't question them. Because, it's come back that this guy, he was in the Marines from 1972 to 1976. Okay, and the Marines weren't in Vietnam in those years. And he was a refrigerator mechanic. That was it. He said he was a recon ranger. That's not even an actual, apparently, a thing position you can be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if he was trying to say, like, the Marines have that force recon, and then you've got the Army Rangers, and some kind of combination thereof. It doesn't matter. The guy got his DD-214, and I've seen it. He was a refrigerator mechanic. Mm-hmm. He never left the good old U.S. of A. So he's not a Vietnam vet. Anyway, this fella goes marching into the middle of this maelstrom of, epithets going from the blacks toward the white school children and school chants coming back from the white school children to the black Israelites. And he marches up in there beating his drum. And he gets right in the kid's face. And, he's literally beating the drum a couple of inches from the kid's face. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was the kid, I'm a little bit concerned he's going to whack me with the drum stick. Because that's kind of what it seems like he's doing. The drum gets so close to my face, I feel like he's going to whack me. But the kid just stood there. Everybody says, but he smirked at him. The kid clearly didn't know what to do. He doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't know if this guy is coming up being aggressive or if he's about to say something, etc. So the point is, all this got pared down to just the picture of the American Indian guy beating the drum in the kid's face. And everybody says, see, the kid got in his face and confronted him. And that's not what happened at all. And nobody wants to retract all of the horrible things that they've said about these Covington High School students. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there have been death threats. They had to shut that school down for a little while. These are kids. These are kids. They're like 12, 16, whatever. They're not adults. I don't understand how we can be trying to hold them to some kind of level of adult responsibility, number one, which is what everybody in the media and everywhere else immediately did. They immediately jumped to treating these kids like they're adults. Oh, you can't smirk like that. You can't feel this way. You can't think this way. Well, hey, when you're a kid, you're still figuring it all out. And you may be wrong. And we need to give you the opportunity to be able to make changes and things in the way that you think and feel. And this is all normal growing up. But we cannot turn the spotlight on kids and expect them to always behave as we might want adults to behave. And I just want to get back to the fact that I don't think the kids did anything wrong. I think they actually displayed, of the three groups, the high school kids, the black Israelites, and the 2 or 3 Native American people that were there, of those 3 different groups of people, the high school kids behaved the best. They're the ones who didn't initiate disputes with other groups and parties. They're the ones who didn't physically approach other parties and thereby potentially escalating a dispute by getting into somebody's face. They're the ones that actually behaved like adults. But everybody wanted to flip it around on them. And then we've had this media spectacle.
Savannah Guthrie actually sat down with Nicholas Sandmann, did an interview with him, and she got in a lot of heat just before the interview even aired, just for deciding to do an interview with him. Well,
yeah, she got heat, but she also, if you watch that interview, she tried to turn it around. She was like, well, don't you think you bear some fault in all of this? And I'm proud of the young man, Nick Sandmann. He obviously had been prepped, I think, for the interview. But he stood his ground, and he says, look, I didn't do anything wrong. I was standing there. I had every right to stand there. He had every right to walk up to me. I was listening to him. I didn't disrespect him, and then, well, what about the little smirk or the smile? I smiled. Since when did it become offensive to smile at somebody? That's the sign of friendliness when you smile at somebody. And hey, haven't you ever been at like a carnival and some crazy person like dances up to you or something, and you kind of don't know what to do? You kind of smile about it. You look at your friends like, hey, I don't know what to do here. I mean, this is a very normal reaction. So it doesn't mean he's smirking or disrespecting or anything like that. And all those people from the media and the talking heads and the chattering class, they wanted to take one photograph and build their own context in their own mind around the photograph that supports all their preconceived notions. And those preconceived notions are that white people are racist, that white people have too much privilege, that white people are the problem. And that's all their preconceived notions. So they slapped all that onto these poor Covington kids who didn't ask for any of that and aren't part of that problem. You know, and to me, it's really unfair. It's disappointing. And it just shows you just how low our media has sunk in this country, that's the kind of stuff that they're turning out. And then they're not even apologizing it afterwards when they've gotten so many things so wrong. They've gotten all the context wrong. They've gotten the facts about the players wrong. You know, Nathan Phillips, who there's always a Vietnam vet. These kids are insulting our decorated military. No. You know, I mean, look, the guy served, and we should thank him for that because everybody who serves has given to this country. But he's not a Vietnam vet, which is what he wants to go around claiming. So you've got a little bit of stolen valor there. You know, when you're in the military, it's kind of a point of honor. You don't claim to do stuff that you didn't do. You know, that to me, that's very obvious. You know, that's a point of honor with a lot of these military folks. And if you do claim to do stuff you didn't do, then you don't fit in with them because they don't like that. So Nathan Phillips is, you know, he's a provocateur. He's somebody who doesn't have a problem lying about why things came to be. And he lied all about this situation, too. He said he was scared. You mean after he got up in that kid's face, beating a drum a couple of inches from the kid's face, he's the one that's scared? Well, my goodness, then why didn't he just walk away? I mean, my goodness, it's not like he was being held there. He's the one that created the situation. So it's strictly, he was a provocateur. This is a made-for-TV situation, which is kind of what we've been talking about. And isn't it sad that the news in our country has come to that level, where we're not actually reporting on normal things that actually happen? They're creating situations and then spinning them to support their pre-existing narrative. Well, another place where that's coming to pass is Venezuela, it looks like. I mean, and I can't figure out exactly what's going on in Venezuela because we're not getting good information. But I have been listening to a few folks on kind of the other side. And, you know, there are apparently a lot of people in that country that still support Hugo Chavez, who was kind of like the godfather of the communist movement in that country. I'm sure I'm glossing over things a little bit by putting it that way. But in trying to just move forward and talk about what's going on now, we'll just refer to it as that. So his, you know, sort of hand-picked successor, Nicolas Maduro, is the guy that's in power right now. So he's carrying forward that communist dictatorship type of policy that they had, or that type of regime. Government. Yeah, the regime. And allegedly actually won re-election last fall. Now, I don't know how they count the votes. I don't know if it's a free and fair election in Venezuela. I suspect it's not. But I don't know what actually happened. You know, just because the election may not have been completely fair doesn't mean that the guy's got no support. I don't know. So it seems like there is some group of people in Venezuela, and I understand it's about a third of the people are committed to the Chavez, I think they call them Chavistas, but they're committed to that regime, including the successor, Nicolas Maduro, and that's about a third of the country. Now, the U.S., I guess, has orchestrated this guy, Juan Guaido, or Guaido, I think they're calling him. They're not using a hard G, to actually come in and self-swear himself in and declare himself to be president. And we had a bunch of other nations in the surrounding area agree with us. But, you know, it's very interesting to me that the military didn't flip. So the military is still on Maduro's side. And I also understand that the Russians are sending in a cadre of about 400 special forces guys. And I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but it seems like they might do something like they're doing for Assad. You know, in other words, there might be some kind of a protective force that's put into play there. What do we got? 10 seconds. 10 seconds before the break. Well, we're not being able to do that one justice, but I'll tell you what, it looks like a failed coup right now. We're going to talk about lasers that can display sounds when we come back.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. If you were impressed earlier with some of Morgan Streetman's historical references, you're really going to be impressed now as we delve into Optic Society of America's laser beam sound in our Out There segment. You handed that to me and I started to look at it. You said, here, Roxanne, if you want the official report that we're talking about. I'm like, what does this say? I get the general idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, this just came out on Friday. And I caught sight of it, and I thought, wow, that is really amazing. And the name of the actual published, and this is peer-reviewed, published scientific study is Photoacoustic Communications, delivering audible signals via absorption of light by atmospheric H2O. That's water. Okay, this came out of MIT's Lincoln Laboratories. And what I thought was just, let me just tell you what this technology does, big picture. And this is early stage development. This is being funded by the U.S. Air Force right now. But what the technology has been demonstrated to be able to do in this study is that they can actually communicate a sound wave to a person, to an individual, by beaming a laser beam at them, not by sending sound waves, by sending light waves. And these light waves in the near-infrared spectrum is the spectrum they're focusing on. They say works particularly well because they excite, essentially they are absorbed by water. And so they end up they end up exciting, both atmospheric water near to the target and also, like you say, the water that's in your body. So they can actually basically pop you in the forehead with one of these lasers, and it's not going to burn a hole in your forehead, and it's not going to put your eyes out. In fact, they've checked that. This is one of the reasons they like this particular style of laser, this type of laser, because it is safe for the eyes, and that's one of their criteria. But they can beam a audio message into your head. I mean, can you imagine it? You could be walking along the hallway. Morgan, hello? What? Somebody talking to me? Morgan, this is God. God? Yes, this is God, Morgan. Oh, okay, what is it? And they can do this to you. You wouldn't even know it. You don't know it's coming from the laser beam. And so, I mean, they're saying now this could have a lot of applications, and you could think that this could have a lot of applications. Mm-hmm. And when you add to it things like knowing exactly where we all are with our cell phones, I mean, you really could get some very sophisticated devices that can beam out different messages to different people. And it's a little bit complicated the way that they actually make the sound. It involves with sweeping the laser, slight movements in the laser where the laser's pointing, very, very, very slight. So it would be completely imperceptible to our eyes, but very slight movements in the way that what they call sweep the laser. If they sweep it at the speed of sound, that's part of what creates this sound effect down at the end of the laser. Now, add to it a further complication is that it is tuned specifically for where the recipient is standing, so that if you were to, let's say, accidentally walk in between this beam of laser and whoever it was supposed to be hitting, you wouldn't actually hear anything. Mm-hmm. So if you put your forehead in there, but you were just closer to the laser, you'd get nothing. So they literally can target the exact person they want to receive this message, and nobody else receives the message. So now I'm imagining this scenario where, let's say you walk into an airport, and instead of cameras up there, they've got these, laser modules that now, because they know exactly who you are when you walk in the airport, it can sense your phone and who you are. Okay, they know you're coming up here, and they could beam a special message to you and say, hey, you're going to have to go over to this TSA line or something like that. I mean, that's how they're talking about using the positive aspects of this technology.
How is that so positive? Why do we need that? Why can't we just have an intercom system?
Well, that's a great question. Now
I don't want laser beams in my head.
Now we're going to be questioning a lot of things if we start asking those questions, mm-hmm. because, we could accomplish all the same stuff using our simplified systems. And for some reason, we are going with overcomplication of everything, more technology and everything, because we don't view that as a systemic weakness. To have all of this overcomplication, everything is overworked and over technology, it involves too much high technology, that's a real weakness because that makes it subject to breaking and malfunctioning. Whereas, the old school written word on a written page, is while, you can't push that around to 1,500 other TSA stations instantaneously like you can do with our technological stuff. The written word on the written page doesn't break. It never malfunctions, the old ways of doing things. But, this was interesting to me because it brought back to mind some of the stuff that I thought about, which is there is a book out there called Operation Mind Control that's a fascinating book. It's very hard to find. Apparently, the CIA actually bought up the entire first printing of this book because they didn't want that information out there. So you can now get this book you can actually find it on the internet. You can download the full copy of it for free. I believe it's on the Internet Archive, but it's not something that you can just type into Google, and that's not going to show you where to get it. You're going to have to do a little digging to actually find this. But it's called Operation Mind Control, and one of the things that it described was how the CIA had developed an implantable microphone that they would implant up in your sinuses, so just they go up the nose a little bit and put something in your sinuses, and through the harmonic resonance of the bones in your face, they could actually put a voice in your head. And this was all remote control, and they developed this, and this existed in the 70s. So that's where they were at then, and you always hear about these crazy people who say they heard voices, and, maybe they did hear voices, maybe they did, and this is going to make it even easier because now you don't need anything. You don't need headphones. You don't need an implant in your head. You just, as you are today, they can target you, put these voices in your head. Now, of course, this technology isn't, as far as we know, it isn't commercialized yet, so we wouldn't see it in widespread use. In other words, it's just now being developed, but this is the idea for the technology. So I'm even thinking you could have drones flying around, which have these laser beams on them and designed to target, specific types of people with certain phone signatures, because, again, they can know exactly who you are, and all the data is interconnected. I mean, including every online poll you've ever taken, every time you've ever answered the phone for a telemarketer, everything you've ever purchased with a credit card, and so on and so forth is all tied together in a big database. So as we get the computers that are capable of searching and using that data, we can make use of it.
Now I'm a little worried about those drones I saw at Gasparilla.
Oh, they had drones at Gasparilla?
They were beaming me.
They
That's
didn't
why
get
I've been
you.
hearing those voices.
No, they didn't get you. They were going after other people.
I'm surprised you went to Gasparilla.
Me too.
I took the baby. What a great parent I am.
To the actual Gasparilla, not the kids' Gasparilla.
No, we graduated from that.
Ooh, wow. Well, you want to expose her to a lot of cultural experiences early on, right? Well, folks, we'll be beaming out the laser beam later today from 5 to 6 p.m., and we'll be back next week from noon to 1 on the Morgan Streetman Show. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And don't forget to exercise your brain at least once a week.